If you've come here to learn how to work with deformers inside of Cinema 4D, you've come to the right place. I have an entire playlist on deformers and the various ways in which they work. Today we are exploring 5. They have very similar settings. They help you animate your models, changing shape and form, and they're very useful. We're covering twist, bend, taper, shear, and bulge today inside of Cinema 4D. I'm super excited to go through this with you, and you'll find these deformers in a few different places on your screen. One of the first places you'll find them is under your Create drop-down menu. Under your operators, under Deformers, you'll see all your deformers listed down here. Some of these we've already covered in the past. Today we're covering the ones listed under Shapes. So bend, bulge, shear, taper, twist are located here. They can also be found over here. If you hold a click, you'll see them showing up in the same order as we did previously see on the Create drop-down menu. So it's really nice that Cinema 4D is nice and consistent like that with their UI. And of course, we're going to need to show how these work on an object. So let's drop in a cube. About the twist first, because you'll notice that those settings for the twist deformer are there for the bulge, taper, shear, and bend as well. So what we'll need to do is drop this into our scene, our twist, and it does a lot like what it sounds like it does. We can drop it within our cube. And if you have not yet already, I recommend changing your display mode to garage shading lines. That will allow you to see the edges. So the reason why we needed to drop the twist within the hierarchy of the cube is that's our way of telling Cinema 4D the twist is affecting the cube, and the cube is considered our parent, and the twist is considered the child of the parent. Just some 3D terminology to be aware of. Now our twist over here, it won't make a big impact until we do something specific first, and that is to add segments to our cube. So when you think of something bending, we need to give it areas in which it can bend. So that means it needs more edges. So we're going to increase our segments in the X, Y, and Z. And I'll just increase these up to 20 in all directions, and you can see my edges in here because we have adjusted our display mode to include lines. So that's the first step. Now let's go back over here to our twist and go through these. So you'll have the basic settings you have in any object, and we've gone over this a bit in the past. You'll have your coordinates where you can control where your object actually is in terms of coordinates for your twist. Now, under the Objects tab, this is where things start getting interesting in here. You can adjust your size of your deformer, and you'll see we have this bounding box here. So we can adjust the size in here manually with these. You can also choose a direction. If you choose Auto, that will be based on the positioning you have already for the twist in our bounding box. So you can move this using E, you can rotate using R, and you'll see this changes accordingly, and so on, like you move any other object. Now, why this matters is whatever direction you have this rotated and positioned in your screen will be what this snaps to if you hit Auto for your alignment. Auto will take the direction this is pointing in your screen and use fit to parent in order to position that there. So if I, for example, choose any one of these directions, positive X, positive Y, positive Z, or negative Z, or auto, that will be determining what direction this fits to this cube object we have. So let me show you what happens if I click auto. It'll just, and then hit fit to parent. You'll see that it just snaps to the shape of our cube, and that bounding box snaps to that cube there. And then when I start adjusting the angle, you'll begin to see our cube twist. So that's really fun. And you'll notice also that again, if I reduce these segments, we're going to have less smooth twisting. So these segments really give it the ability to twist in here nice and smooth. And you can even increase these beyond that amount by typing in a number or just clicking and dragging to the right, just so you are aware. Now, in here, we have these options as I was talking about, and I just want to show you what these look like. So right now we're using auto. If we use positive X, our alignment positive X, and then hit fit to parent, you'll see it's twisting the other way. Negative X, fit to parent, you'll see it twists that way. Positive Y, negative Y, just so that you get to visualize all these options in here so you know for yourself how these work. For right now, I'm going to use positive Y, fit to parent. You also have these additional options. So now at this point, I'd like to show you what happens if I were to move down this twist with the limited option mode turned on. You'll notice that it's limited to that area, but with the limited on, if I move this to the left or right, the model kind of follows. So it's limiting it in the Y direction, this deformation happening. I'm going to hit undo to snap that back to the middle. If we choose within box, it will limit the deformation to being within the twist deformer's bounding box. So if I move this to the left and right now, you'll see that it is really only deforming the section that is still within that bounding box. Otherwise, it just snaps off, as you can see. I'm going to fit this back to our parent, and I'll move this down again. If I choose unlimited, you'll see that this deformation will continue beyond this box or beyond limiting it in the Y direction. So now you can see it continues throughout, regardless of where I move this up and down. It continues that deformation, and angle, of course, is how many degrees rotation you would like within this bounding box frame. So you can control that as well. So really useful to use the twist. You'll notice we have these diamond shapes here representing keyframes. That in fact means that you can keyframe any one of these effects in here. So I could have this animate on here, the angle, just like so. So first I keyframe it at 0% there, and then at the end I want to keyframe this again at 360, so I'll go ahead and do that. And now if I hit play, you'll see we have an animation, and you can of course make this more detailed, adjust the curves. I've seen people use deformers for characters and more to animate inanimate objects, give them some personification. And yeah, it's pretty fun and cool. But now you've learned the basic settings actually for many of the other deformers. So we're going to be talking a little bit more about the fields at the end of this tab here, because each of the deformers we're covering today do have that as an option. I'm just going to move this cube over here, and we're going to make another cube and talk about our next deformer, which is Bulge. So now we got in our new cube. We're going to follow the same series of steps as before, increasing our segments of our cube. Then we are going to go ahead and drop in our Bulge. And just like we talked about doing before, we want to drag and drop this within the cube to see it taking place. Now you still have the size, alignment options, and fit to parent options and mode options that you had previously with the twist. So you already know these. So for right now, I'm going to keep this in the positive Y, hit fit to parent, and now we've had this adjusted to its shape and size. From here, we can adjust the strength of the bulge. So I'll start increasing this, and you'll see what shape this does. So this can be really useful for animation as well, adjusting a character's shape, and it's rather fun. You can imagine animating a character's muscles to kind of bulge out. Maybe you can use that for something like this. And we have these other options in here. So you'll see we have this option called curvature. By default, it's set to 100%. Now the curvature, like its name suggests, affects the curvature. So as I decrease this, it becomes more and more straight. So you can see that these lines are more linear than curved. They don't have that nice roundness to them. So if you like the roundness in here, all you need to do is bump up that curvature in there, and there it is. And as before, you can keyframe any of these. You can also select this one called fillet. So I'm going to turn that on. Now, the way that I think of the fillet is it eases into the bulge and creates a fillet, and basically a fillet is a curvature along an edge usually, but in this case you can see that it's easing from this into here, and there's that little bit of curvature there. So if I turn on and off the fillet, you can see the effect that's happening. And the fillet actually shows up in a couple of the other deformers we're covering today. So that is our bulge for today. And I'd like to move this over here to the left now that we've gone through all those settings. So now you know 2 deformers, we're going to drop in another cube. Same as before, increase the segments. This time we're going over our taper today. So I'm going to go ahead and drop in our taper. And in order to have this affect our cube, we're going to drop it within the hierarchy of the cube so that it is a child of the cube. And now, with all that in place, I'm going to recognize that we have many of the same settings as before. We have size, we have alignment, we have fit to parent. We've covered all of those before. We've talked about strength, increasing the strength of the deformer. Same as before, you can see it just makes a different shape here. It tapers it. And if I hit fit to parent, it will, of course, do as we talked about before and bring that in there. I'm just going to move this cube up a little bit for viewing purposes. And I did that using the E hotkey. And then in here, you'll see we also have curvature. So right now our curvature is at 100%. We can increase it more and really make this extra curvy, or we can make it linear and it looks more like a pyramid. So we really have those capabilities in there. I'll increase the curvature to the default of 100% so that it's easier for you to see how the fillet would look like on a shape like this. So I'll go ahead and turn that on. And now you can see that we kind of have this ease and transition between these two. It kind of looks a little bit more like a Hershey's Kiss than an Egyptian pyramid when we turn that on. So that's a little bit fun and funky in there. And now I'm going to move all of these over here to the right because now we know all of these deformers and the settings for them. Now our next one up is called the Shear. So let's drop in another cube, increase our segments in here so that you can really see those nice crisp deformations taking place. And we're going to need our next deformer, our Shear. So I'm just going to drop this on in here, and the name is pretty self-explanatory. I'll make this a child of the cube, fit it to the parent, and I'm just going to move the cube on up here once again. We have the same settings as before: size, alignment, fit to parent, mode, strength, angle, curvature, and fillet. So all of these, it just makes a slightly different shape. So let's talk about what that shape is and show what it is with the strength. I'll increase the strength, and you can see that it is sharing it one direction, kind of shifting it over that one section. And we can, of course, adjust the angle in here. So you can actually have this sharing all different directions. So you can see that from this view, the angle is affecting that. And that's how it looks on this deformer shape. And you have the very fun curvature. Again, you can make it more curvy, less curvy. You can make it linear. And of course, you can keyframe any of these like usual. And if we increase our curvature to the default of 100 and turn on our fillet, you'll see exactly what effect this has on this deformer. So you can see it adds a little bit extra curvature. It kind of starts easing into the deformation a little bit more from the top and the bottom. So that is good to be aware of here. So we've covered all of those. The last deformer we have today is actually the bend, but it will feel easy to you because we've already learned many of the settings for it and the last ones we've covered. So as usual, I'm going to shift these all over and make room for a new cube in here. We got this new cube. Okay, we're going to increase the segments. As usual, we're going to drop in our deformer. We're going to drop in our bend, and it's actually at the top of that list there. I'm going to put it within the hierarchy of the cube as a child, and I'm going to say fit to parent. So we've covered size, we've covered alignment, fit to parent, mode, strength, angle. Keep length is different, that's new. And we're going to talk about origin. So super exciting. We have some new settings to talk about. Let's first show what this bend looks like. And it can look different depending on what you're doing in here. But like in its name, it bends. So let's increase our strength in here. So you can see increasing our strength, we can make it bend all the way around like a donut. So that's super fun. And I did that just by increasing that strength, and there you can see what it does. And you can get it to bend different directions, again, by using the fit to parent and having it go different ways, or you can position it the relative direction you'd like it to bend in 3D space and then choose fit to parent, and it will snap it to your model. That bounding box there. And the angle, you can see what effect that has. This one's really fun, I feel. You can get some really interesting, fun animations by keyframing these, as I'm sure you can imagine. I'll put the angle back to the default for right now. So the interesting thing about the keep length is while you're bending some objects, you may want them to bend less stretchy. Like maybe if we're bending a piece of paper, I don't know if I have one on my desk to show you, but it keeps its length. It doesn't get really stretchy. It's not like bending, let's say, a cartoon character's arm that can stretch. So if we want to keep the length in here, we just need to check this on. And it'll constrain that to the length of the cube. So as I increase the strength, you can see that the length of the cube isn't changing during the bend. It's constrained. If I turn that off, it can stretch like stretchy cartoon arms. So you can go ahead and do that. And then the other fun thing that I'd like to show you is that you can actually adjust the shape of this bend a little bit with these settings in here. And these origin options are actually new in 2026. So even if you've been using the bend for years, this is completely new. So you can choose C shape. So you can see that this is bending in a C shape. Center C shape. You can choose S shape. Now it bends like an S. You can choose bottom. Now it's bending from the bottom. Or you can choose to have it bend starting from the top. So you can also control it that way. That's very helpful. I know that it's been difficult before in the past to really position the bend the way you would like, and these extra controls added in Cinema 4D 2026 really make that a whole lot easier to do. Now we're going to get into something really fun that I had promised you at the beginning of this video, which is we're going to talk a little bit about this Fields tab. And you'll notice that that is present in every single one of these deformers here. So we could spend hours talking about fields. So I'm going to keep this pretty simple how this works. And in the future, I may make tutorials just on all the different fields. So you'll see that we have this here, and all of your fields are listed here. They're pink, and that can help you remember what's what. Our deformers are purple, these are pink. And you can also select fields from here. So there's some different areas where you can grab them. For right now, I'm going to grab this linear field. And this linear field you can see is down here. I'm going to just stretch it out a little bit. Now, this is acting like a field from high strength to least strength within our scene. So we can actually use this to control the strength of our deformers and have this pass through our different deformers. So if I want this field to control the bend, all I need to do is drag and drop this linear field within here. And then you'll see this bend has no strength until I begin passing this through that object all the way, and then you can see it bends into place. So that's pretty cool. And you can animate things by animating the position of your fields. You can get some pretty cool effects here. Like, I even just like that movement there. So very interesting. And you can also rotate this. To get a different effect, and you can move it up and down. So really fun, really cool. And if I want this to affect the other deformers, all I need to do is drag and drop this into their fields here too. So I can drag and drop this in here, drag and drop this in here, drag and drop this in here. So we can have the same field affecting multiples of these. And these fields come in all different shapes, and you can really customize them as needed. So that's super fun. I'm going to go over to this last frame so that we can see how this impacts the twist as well. The twist is a really fun one to experiment with. This would be fun to turn around 90 degrees because there's just something really satisfying about watching something twist like that. So you can animate something twisting with it. It's a really powerful thing. So you can imagine if you're doing some kind of like electronic device animation and you want to show chords twisting in a really cool, epic way in a commercial, you can do that just using a twist deformer. And it's really simple, and you can get some really high-end looking effects with it. And also by layering different types of fields, and you can add different effects to it beyond that. And we'll definitely get more into that when we explore fields, because fields can control a lot of different things within your scene, way more than just deformers. So if that's something you're interested in me covering in the future, please let me know in the comments so I know to make a video about that. And if you're looking for an art community to join, I'd love for you to join my Discord server, because you get to meet other cool artists and you can share your art in there, and anything that you make from these videos, or if you have any questions about these videos, you can drop them in there. If you prefer one-on-one help, I also offer one-on-one coaching, but the Discord server is completely free. And it's a great way to meet other people and share your art. So I hope you join me there. And thank you so much for joining me here on Ambient 3D Animations.